Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Heal, Nourish, Grow podcast. I am joined today by Deb Erickson, and she is going to share with us some things that we can use to shift habits, which, as you know, is one of my favorite topics. And this should be really appropriate because this episode will be airing just prior to the new year when people are looking to change certain things. So, anyway, welcome, Deb. Could you tell us a little bit about the work that you do and how you got into all this?
Yeah. I was a teacher. I graduated from school with a teaching degree and a coaching degree and, realized very quickly, within a matter of years, it was like, okay, this is not going to pay the bills. And so I began to speak and travel, motivational speaking. I was working with salespeople. And I started recognizing that there was a real need to help people bridge the gap between what they knew they were supposed to do, no matter what the goal is, right? I know that I need to be doing this, but you're still not doing it. And I realized that gap was being created by doubt and uncertainty. The fear center of the brain would be triggered off and people were getting stuck, sabotaging, making excuses. And the thing I think for most people when they set a goal, let's talk about a health goal, and you don't achieve it, is that you take it personally. At least women do, right? It's kind of like, it's me. I just can't do it. I have no willpower. And the truth is there's something much more sinister going on. It's as if your brain is actually working against you. So it can be your greatest ally, and it many times is definitely the great obstacle. That's where I put my focus. I've spent years studying the mind, the brain, what it is that causes us to continue to repeat patterns that no longer serve us. And most recently, I built an entire system to support people using an app, being able to interrupt those habitual patterns that don't serve them and choose better habits instead.
Oh, love it. And based on your experience of working with so many people, what would you say is the most common barrier to changing habits, or what consistencies do you see
Right.
in people when you're working with them on changing certain things?
Most habits are being run by the subconscious mind. They're kind of below the surface. They're just running. I would say the vast majority of people don't know why they do what they do, right? Because that's really being run, it's subliminal. It's under the surface. And so one of the things that I notice is that when people become aware, awareness is always the key to change. You become aware, then you can make different conscious choices, and we can rewire the subconscious mind so that you can actually begin to create automated responses to habits that really help you.
Yeah, and I think that's the real challenge that you hit the nail on the head there. And I actually had another guest recently that spoke about this same thing, but it's the actual awareness, because once things come very habitual and they are sort of below the surface and subliminal, then how do you even get the awareness to discover what they are at that point? So that becomes the real challenge. And I'm assuming you must have some tips or some tricks about how to get to those things.
So I like to talk about the ABCs of mindset management, right? And A is awareness. You've got to be able to question and examine and observe, what's going on here? What am I doing? The first thing is to know what, right? What's happening. Then the B, belief, it's really about examining the old beliefs that no longer serve you, that are driving that behavior, and then creating new belief habits and new belief patterns that will take you where you want. So we either belief bust or we belief build. And then the C stands for choice point, right? Recognizing in the moment when you can decide and make a conscious choice to create a new pattern. So everything I do is based on neuroscience understanding, number one, and then neuro tools, because you really need a little bit of help. Otherwise, you would have broken the patterns a long time ago. So when people need help, they need two kinds of help: conscious awareness help, right? And that's when in this moment, I know, man, I am headed down an old pattern. I'm getting ready. Cravings are taking over. Old patterns. Have you ever stood at the refrigerator door? You open the door and you're like, I need something. And in that moment, you don't really need something, but you just got stuck in a habit, right? Busted. And so we've got tools that help people in the conscious moment, and then tools that rewire. So you can actually listen to neuro tools as you're falling asleep, as you're, on a run, as you're doing something else in your life. You can listen to these neuro tools, and what it does is it plants the seed of a different conversation, of different fundamental beliefs, of different energy, so that it just becomes easier to make that shift.
So would you say it's almost something in that specific tool that you just mentioned, is it something similar to like a guided meditation? So it's not passive, but it's sort of just, if you do it often enough, it starts to become kind of sink in more and be ingrained more than a real obvious thing. And I do have I have a thought of an example after you kind of address
Yeah.
that question.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about neurotools. They're a combination of everything. So as an example, the music in the background, right? What it's done, it's got binaural beats, the energy that calms the brainwave frequencies so that your mind is open. So you're in a very calm, relaxed state. There's visualizations, there's affirmations, there's a meditation bell. In other words, all of these things are kind of linked together so that the brain will calm down, open up, because that's when we can reprogram. Your original programming, whatever you have now, was really set in place in the first 7 years. Most people, you got 7 years when the mind is open. Children are basically big sponges. And so they accept all that programming. And then we just keep repeating patterns for the rest of our life, unless you become conscious and aware, you choose something new. So all new patterns have to be repeated. So the way we reprogram is repetition over time with emotion. Repetition over time with emotion. So you're right. We're going to repeat something over and over and over until it becomes the new truth in our mind. And you got to do that in a space where your brain is open and receptive.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I know when I used to teach yoga classes publicly, and I've done it myself for years. And one of the things when we talk about at the end of the practice, you've done all this physical movement, you've done this focused work on breath and all of these things. And when you're in shavasana at the end, you're kind of just laying on the floor, and people are extremely receptive in that moment because of, I think, most of the reasons that you just mentioned. But the other thing that you said that I would love a great example of, because I'm not really sure what this means. I think I have an idea, but you said the repetition and all that, but with emotion. What is the with emotion part, and why does that make it stick?
The subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between a real experience that you're having and something that you're imagining, especially if there's deep emotion. So a great example, you go into a movie theater, you sit down, the lights go down, and then there's creepy music that starts, right? And there's a very foggy scene, and a woman is walking by herself down an alley. And then all of a sudden there's a screech, and you jump. Why? Because even though your conscious mind knows you are sitting in a movie theater, the subconscious mind, it can feel it. It's taking its cues. Your heart is beginning to race. Something is about to happen. And yet, you're sitting safe in a theater. That's how it works, is the more emotion that is involved in the moment, the deeper the programming, the deeper the impact.
And that's interesting. And it also is kind of, I think, when you get further away from whether it's a traumatic event, a happy event, whatever, your brain kind of has this thing where it protects you, and you kind of forget how intense that emotion was at the moment. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, it seems to me. Like, you can use that to reprogram, but at the same time, you've used it in that moment. So
Right.
is that how the tools really work more on a neuronal levels? Is that reprogramming the wiring that you've already done in the first 7 years of your life?
Exactly. So neuroscientists say that neurons that fire off together wire together. And when you get neurons that wire together, they create pathways. And the more times it fires off, then those pathways become networks. And so the place, which is how habits get created, right, is we repeat something over and over and over and over. And before you know it, the subconscious mind grabs that pattern and says, never mind, I can do this without any help. And it begins to run it, right? So what we are doing is we need to scratch the record. If you think about an old vinyl record. When the needle was running perfectly, everything was beautiful. But the minute there was a scratch, the needle followed the new scratch. And you could never play that record the same way again. Well, it's exactly the same way in your brain. It's kind of like the pathways are running, but when you want to make a change, you got to destroy that current pathway, create a new pathway, run it until your brain goes, oh, I see. This is the way we respond now. So when I want chocolate, I feeling a craving, right? I can become aware and go, wow, what is it I think chocolate's going to give me? And I can look into my past and go, oh, I remember my dad, he always gave me chocolates when I got hurt and when I was afraid. And when he had to leave, he gave me chocolates. And so my brain wired up, chocolate is safety, chocolate is love, right? So now what does that mean here? Well, what it means here is I'm looking for some love. I'm looking for a sense of safety. I'm looking for something else. And I keep asking chocolate to give it to me. And for a moment, I am feeling the thing I'm after, but then afterwards, I pay the price because now I've got cravings going and the sugar. And so what this is really about, the conscious awareness is really about, okay, then when I feel that need for chocolate, what I know, I've gotten triggered. What I know is I'm needing something else. So now what I can do is I can go to my app, right? I can go to my app. I can do a search. I'm just wanting to feel safe. I'm wanting to feel loved. And I can listen to a neuro tool that helps me rewire, right? Adjust to connect to that emotional state I really wanted. So I can say no to the chocolate, but yes to the feeling I was pursuing.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you've got such a tool to go with that. I think that's really interesting when I talk to different people about different types of work. And quite often I struggle with, and I don't think that anybody's ever has this intention, by the way, but I struggle with personally. I'm like, well, are they just wanting to promote their product or whatever, and I want to bring information. And I think most people are like so good at just really giving the information. And it's like, you created this tool because you became passionate about this topic, not the other way
Yeah.
around.
Right.
But
Right.
anything that helps people, I'm all for using the tools because all this stuff is hard enough when you're doing it yourself and doing the work. And I know that because I did it for years before apps or any of that stuff. I've always had this kind of focus. So the fact that we now have tools that provide immediate feedback, like
Yeah.
why wouldn't you use the tools if they work? So I think that's
Right.
really awesome that you created this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I let me just tell you the story because I really created it for me. So I was sexually abused as a child. I have carried 40, 50, 60 pounds extra my whole life, up and down and up and down. I would use willpower and discipline to fight against, make my body adjust. And then the minute I let go, boom, all the weight plus more comes on, right? And on and off, right? So I was at one of my heaviest weights about 5 years ago. And I was standing on a stage because I was on a speaking tour for all the business tools that I've created. I was speaking, I was talking about neuroscience and neuro tools and habit, busting and all that kind of stuff. Woman raises her hand from the back of the room and she said, seems like this would work for other things like weight loss. And in that moment, I have to tell you, here I am on stage, heaviest I've ever been. And I had to go, yeah, it really should work. And I was so humiliated. I went home and I thought, okay, that's it, Erickson. We got to do something about this. So I built this entire system and I started using it every single day. And what I noticed was that my weight just fell off. Seriously, I didn't get on the scale. I wasn't watching the numbers, but I would stand every day or every week. I'd stand in front of a mirror and I just would tug on my pants. In the early days, I was stuffed into it, falling over the top. And then pretty soon I wasn't stuffed. Pretty soon they were moving. And then it wasn't long before I could just pull them down. And as I watched that, it was like, wow, this is such a different experience than I've ever had in my life. I noticed that I was making different choices, but I wasn't forcing it. That I would actually be inspired. It was like, I think I'll have some water. I think I'll go on a walk. I think I'll do some yoga. Wouldn't it be fun to have more greens? Maybe I'll have a salad today. It was as if it felt like out of nowhere, but I know it's not. It was the neuro tools that I had been planting those seeds. But my language changed. Instead of saying, this is the hardest thing I've ever done, I started saying, this is so easy. This is effortless. I mean, I'm transforming in front of my eyes. And yes, I'm making a lot of better choices, but it wasn't willpower. It wasn't willpower, it's mind power. And in that moment, I realized I really had something. I kept building unique neuro tools. And before you know it, all of my business clients started saying, what are you doing? That was 60 pounds ago. I lost that 5 years ago, have not put that back on. And so what I know is that this works. I'm not promoting a specific diet or a workout, regime or any of the stuff that, of course, you have to manage. This is about mindset management. And for me, it was a different journey than I'd ever experienced anywhere else. And really, that's why I created more and more and more of it, because it was like it worked. And I still use all the tools today. I use them every night, every morning, because this is a lifetime journey. This is not, drop some weight for the the big event. This is the rest of your life.
Well, not only that, Deb, it sounds like you really just finally took on the past trauma that you had in a much different way than you'd ever had before. And so it was more like the trauma was feeding into you not feeling well and not feeling good in your body and not, even though you wanted to make good choices, like you said, the willpower, it's just that innate subconscious wiring is in the way so much that it doesn't matter how much willpower that you have. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. Would you agree? I mean, you must have talked to people now that have been using this tool and maybe having a different experience than they ever had before.
For me, what it was the gentleman that abused me said to me every single time, I can do this to you because you're a girl, nobody cares about you, and you're small. So literally, this is what's happening inside of a little 3-year-old brain. My little brain is saying it's not safe to be a girl, can't change that. And it's not safe to be small. I can change that. So what I noticed is my whole life, when I would start dropping weight, I would freak out. Like, I'm not safe, I'm not secure. And I would go into crazy behavior, putting the weight back on again. And I kept doing it over and over and over again. It's like, what is this? Why am I so compelled? And so when you do this work, you begin to explore, right? And have compassion for the wounds of your past that are driving this extraordinary behavior. And you make peace with that. You find a place where you can forgive, you can make peace, you can really design a life that is not driven by your prehistoric fear center,
Yeah, and thank you for sharing all that, because I think that adds a lot of color to why this works and the types of things that are deep inside and painful that people don't want to address. And this kind of method, I think the rewiring of it, instead of just digging up past history with a therapist and talking about it, which even as a psychology person, I've always kind of struggled with that a bit. I'm thinking, like, sometimes it's like it seems a little worthless and pointless, because you're just talking about it. You're not actually doing the work to create a different way of connecting with it or connecting around it, if that makes sense.
I agree. I got into therapy in my 30s. I was, I was really struggling and got into therapy. I was in therapy a decade, uncovered all the memories, processed all the memories, collected all the stories, confronted, my abuser. I did all that work. But the problem still was I was really angry. I was still very angry. And I still felt very unsafe. So I know that was an important part of a journey, but there's, I don't know. I'm that kind of person that's like, hey, we got to be dealing with this stuff. I need help right now. I can't afford to go into therapy for another decade. I got to have help right now.
Yeah, and that sounds like this is the beauty of what this tool provides. So now that we kind of given the background on it, can
Mhm.
you describe? I mean, number one, it's an app, so obviously people can get it. But can you maybe describe on a more just like what that looks like on a day to day basis, how somebody really uses that?
Yeah, yeah. Being an educator, I mean, that's my background. What I know is that adults learn differently than children. So, children, we can just say, here, memorize this, and we're going to test you on Friday. Adults, you have to help them understand there has to be perspective. Why is it important? How's it going to change my life? What are the benefits going to be? All of that, right? There has to be that. And so, this is a journey where, on a daily basis, part of the app, what it does is it teaches, right? It says, here's the neuroscience, here's what you may be facing. So there's modules that have learning experience so that you get the cognitive awareness piece of it. But then the next piece of it is just the day-to-day application. So there is a power-up little inspirational video every single day that kind of talks through, all right, guys, here's your day. Here's what we're going to be focusing on today. So give an assignment, give people a process, tell them what neuro tools we're going to be using, why we're using them. And so it kind of gives people an instruction every single day. Then there are over 24 neuro tools so that depending on what you're dealing with, you have a resource. Do you need to reframe something? Do you need to, scratch, that old pattern? Do you need a habit block, habit stack? What do we need to do? So they're going to learn how to use it. And then, of course, there's a list of those they can have access to. And then there's a weekly live check-in. So it's not unlike a Weight Watchers where you're going to show up every week and something's going to happen. Going to have success stories. You're going to be able to get a little coaching, ask some questions, get some support. There's a community. So we've tried to pull together everything that we know is important for especially women to set and achieve a goal with their wellness and weight loss. So it's not just weight loss, it's really pretty much you can tackle almost any weight challenge. I had a woman actually on a check-in call this morning who was facing knee surgery, and she resists any kind of rehab, as she was terrified, having panic attacks just thinking about going under. And so she used the system to reframe what was happening and how her rehab was going. And so we checked in about a month later. She's doing fabulous. She made a miraculous recovery inside of the surgery. So basically, here's the thing: your brain is in charge of your body. So when you become the boss of your brain, you become the boss of your body. And that's what people come and play with.
Yeah, it sounds like it's great for all kinds of things. Like you said, not just weight loss, whether it's changing habits around the type of food I mean, it doesn't have to be the type of food you eat, because just because you're a quote unquote, using the air quotes if you're not watching the video. It's one of my favorite things. I'll just do that. And I'm like, wait a minute, nobody can see that. But for example, just because you're a normal weight, and that was what the air quotes were for, whatever that is for you, but it doesn't mean that you're necessarily practicing healthy eating habits or healthy living habits or drinking habits or whatever it is. So it sounds like you could use this to really address anything that is something that you'd like to change in your
Right.
life for a healthier purpose.
Oh, sleep better, reduce stress, mental clarity instead of fogginess. I mean, the number one challenge we have in our society these days is mental wellness.
Mm-hmm.
And mental wellness begins with really understanding what's going on for you. Are you not getting enough sleep? Are your mental and emotional patterns running you into worry and doubt and stress and fear? You've activated the fear center. You can't calm it down. I think that, the last 2 years have demonstrated to us the power of health, wellness, mental wellness, mindset, all of these things. We now see it. It's undeniable how important this is to living a healthy, full, vibrant life.
Yeah, and I'd say you're exactly right with the whole last couple of years. I mean, I think more people than ever are struggling with any number of things, even just anxiety, depression, all kinds of,
Mm-hmm.
or just being fearful of the world now in a different way than they never had before. So
Right.
it's really great that a lot of people are realizing this and kind of bringing these tools more forward so that,
Yeah.
people don't have to suffer in silence and have to go somewhere in person. A lot of this stuff too, it's nice that it's virtual because people do still have that worry about, being in certain situations or being out in public. And this is a way they
Hmm.
can address that. Hopefully where they get back to a place where they can live a more normal life again.
Right.
So thanks for bringing this tool to everyone. It's great. Can you just talk a little bit about future projects, anything you have going on? If people want to work with you or listen to you speak, what are the best ways that they can do those things, be in touch, and find you?
Yeah, well, obviously, our Facebook I know we're going to put all the links here, so I'm not going to rattle all
Yes.
that off. But obviously, you can get Instagram, Facebook, get access. You can go to our website directly. The beautiful thing is people can try the app free for 2 weeks. We decided we were going to do a free trial because what I didn't want to do is say, you put up the money. If you don't like it, we'll give it back. What I wanted to do is say, look, I am so confident you're going to fall in love with this thing that you don't have to put any money up front. Give you 2 weeks. You can get through the whole first module, try all the neuro tools. And then if you like it, then pay, right? Then pay for monthly. And so I am on live with that community every single week. I'm doing podcasts like this with people who have meaningful health and wellness, conversations with the world. So I would say all of those, and I know, like I said, I know we're going to add some links here. All of those are great ways to get connected and stay connected with me and others.
Okay, great. And it sounds like you have a really vibrant community happening, which I've talked about this a lot in my content. I think that community as a resource is underappreciated, and for all aspects of health, community, you need it. It's one of my top 5 C's, and I have like these 5 C's around wellness, and community is probably the
Yeah.
number one actually.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Did you know that women are 80? I think that it's 86. I was going to say 87, but I think it's 86% more likely to achieve a goal if they are surrounded by a positive community. You are
Wow.
exactly right. Community, and especially in times like these, if we're isolated physically, we need to make sure we're not isolated. Logistically, you don't have to be isolated more. You can find robust communities where there is love and support that will surround you. And you're right. We need it. We need it.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Mhm.
I had not heard that stat before, so thank you for sharing that. And again,
Yeah.
thank you for coming on today and sharing all of your wonderful knowledge and experience. I'm looking forward to having the audience try this tool. Like Deb said, you can get it for free for 2 weeks, which is really amazing. So definitely check that out. Get in contact with me or both of us because I'd love to hear how it works for you. I'm definitely going to be trying this for myself as well. So again, Deb, thank you so much for taking the time today. I appreciate it.
It's great to meet you, CHERYL. Amazing work you're doing in the world, and we love you right back.
Oh, thank you so much, Deb. That's very sweet.